Hi everyone, I'm Jim Tolles, and today I want to talk about when people start to notice your inner changes. I want to talk about when those inner changes really start to be outwardly manifested. As a quick reminder, I have more resources below this video that I encourage you to check out. People so often want to get to sort of this idea of an end goal. They want to rush the process. They want to get through the messiness, but that's not how any of this works. We work through releasing our attachments. We work through the sort of inner grind that goes on where our old behavior patterns kind of scream at us for energy, for attention, to be acted out again. We start to notice that in certain ways we're addicted to certain feelings. It can be the feeling of feeling sorry for ourselves. It could be being addicted to being angry with the world. We could be addicted to anxiety, depression. We can be obviously addicted to happiness in very unhealthy ways. We're addicted to the way we think about life, the way we think about ourselves. But as we work through that stuff, as those attachments break down, the possibility to interact with life in newer, more spontaneous and natural ways becomes realized. And while some things will require learning new behavior patterns, which is absolutely useful, there is a way that as we let go of our old patterns, we have more and more freedom to interact with any situation in any way that we need to. That's a powerful thing. And this really isn't immediate. This isn't like, oh, I dropped one issue, I had one session with my therapist, I had one good journaling moment, I meditated really well this last week. This really is something that culminates over time, that as you keep dropping and letting things go, it gets more and more natural to just be as you are and to respond to life as is necessary, whatever that means. And people start to notice that. And it's one of those things that you're not putting on an act. I really want to emphasize that. That it's not like, oh, here's this set of social tactics that I now do that's better than the last set of social tactics, and now I'm going to do that. And because that's rigid. That's the ego saying, oh, this is who I am now. Now I can do this all the time and get all the things that I still want. And right? No. Right? This is this dropping of our assumptions that we can plan how to live and how life should go. And letting that go, that allows us to be spontaneous to the spontaneity of life, that life changes. It gives us different things, both more enjoyable and less enjoyable, depending on what's going on in the world around us. And then we can respond from a place of peace. And that gets noticed, particularly in situations where there's a lot more charge. And other people start to say, well, why aren't you so upset or scared or sad or whatever their expected behavior of you is? Which, if it's somebody who already knows you, then they're just going off of their past experiences with you, because that's what the ego is. The ego looks at life through the past. It looks at life through all these past experiences that it remembers, because it forgets most of them, but there's a few that it remembers, and it projects forward onto the present moment. So people who know you from the past, and they see that you're not acting from your past anymore, which just means that you're not acting in the way they're used to seeing you act, they might get curious. Sometimes you get compliments, sometimes not. Right, so that's a big difference than what a lot of people are trying to do. And when I get asked this question, well, what do I do? Or what do I do is really a question of how do I get people to like me and me to get the things that my ego still wants? And the answer is I have no idea. And really, the even truer answer is we want to let go of those deeper ego desires, because they're part of the problem. Because when the ego looks at a situation, let's say it's a car wreck, it wants to see something in a certain way. Some egos don't want to see the car wreck. And so they're in denial, and that, of course, makes it difficult to deal with it. Other egos want to project their anger into somebody. And they can do this even when they're the person at fault. Well, it's this other person still for stopping so quickly. It's like we find all sorts of different ways to reinforce our ego story versus if we're more neutral, the way you start to come out of that situation, you're like, oh, okay, I'm sorry I hit you. And okay, let's exchange information. And it becomes very calm and logical, truly logical. Most human logic isn't logical because what we do is we have false assumptions that we build our logic on, and then we try to reinforce them. So a common misunderstanding is like the need to be successful. It's like we're so mired in that belief that we have to be, that we build all this logic on top of it that looks like logical to us because we don't really want to question what's this idea of success, what does that mean, what does it cost me? Some of the people, that can be extremely successful in life are actually miserable because of the cost of trying to achieve external world success. As we go inwards and we change internally, and some of those changes become manifest externally, whether we have external world success, whether people praise us or not, is just dependent on the external world and the people themselves. What's their ego agenda? So when I say people start to notice internal changes, I'm not saying they like it. It's going to be completely independent of you. It had nothing to do with you in the first place. When you were stuck in your ego, it had nothing to do with you then. It will still have nothing to do with you. Some people will like you. Some people will not like you. Some people will be neutral to the changes you've made, and other people will have a weird response you can't categorize, and others will ignore you. And those are basically the 5 responses you get with anything at any level of conscious awareness. That's why interchange is for you. Now, is it true that a lot of times there are good things and life gets a little bit easier in certain ways? Yeah, because you're not making things difficult and you're also not generally agitating other people. So that's a big thing that changes for a lot of people because we spend a lot of time creating more suffering around us. So if we're angry about something, that upsets somebody else, and now they're upset. And now there's 2 people who are upset, and we don't like the feeling of being upset, so then that other person complains to somebody else, and now they're upset. And we kind of do this awful chain of suffering. When you're more at peace, we kind of neutralize that stuff because we don't react. And we don't pass it on to somebody else. And for some people, they'll like that. Because like, oh, wow, this is just such a relief to be around you. You feel so peaceful and ease. And that can actually create some interesting challenges where people kind of fall in love with your energy because you're not so upset about things and you're just more even-keeled. That's kind of a big thing with doing inner work and resolving attachments is you just don't get as upset as much because why? Being upset doesn't really serve any purpose. And then others who wanted you to join in their little misery party, whether it's to feel sad, angry, upset, or unreasonably happy about like a sports team winning, right? That sort of unreasonable happiness, like, they won, they put the ball in the hoop and fine, right? Doesn't affect me. Right? That this type of person is no longer identifying with basketball in this particular case. And the other person's like, oh, but you used to love this sports team so much, and why don't you like them anymore? And right, and it just seems really odd, particularly if you're like really into basketball for most of your life. Once again, understand that the way these interchanges start to come out of us is just natural on its own. It really isn't a 5-step plan to being a better person. That's not what we're doing here. We're dissolving the attachments that get in the way of us responding naturally. And if we do find places where we need to develop ourselves, say if somebody hasn't been good at speaking their voice and they no longer have attachments to holding back, right? There's a practice in learning to speak, and maybe you even take speech classes or something like that to learn to express yourself more fully in ways that you hadn't learned before. But then after you've done that, right, you don't need to keep thinking about this is how I'm going to present myself, right? Who is it that needs to worry about presentation? It's the ego. So we absolutely do get to these points where we've changed significantly, and that other people start to notice those changes. But once again, how it's noticed and received will always be dependent on the other people. You don't control that. So we're not getting to a place where everyone loves you. That's not it. But as you get into the space I'm describing, you don't care as much because you're at peace with yourself, and that's probably one of the best forms of self-love that can possibly exist. I hope this video is helpful and guides you on your way, on your spiritual path. Bye, everyone.